the power density of the product is getting to absolutely eye-watering stages where if you compare it to a carbon ceramic brake disc, it's pretty much there. Now that starts to open up whole new games as to where you can put the motors. Maybe instead of having them right in the center, you can start placing them close to the wheels. We're really on that trajectory of huge, not just little steps, but big step gains in the propulsion system.
These motors are in cars people know.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously...
This isn't just pie in the sky.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting when, we've got cars launched on a number of different vehicles. I think they've been specified on 5 different platforms now. So the volumes are growing, the technology's out there in the hands of many, many people. And actually...
So should I say it or should you say
it? Well, you can say
it.
Yeah.
This is the motor that's in the SF90 and the 296.
Yeah.
So again, and this is where Tim and I kind of hit it off in California because we both kind of come from the tech world. And I've seen previous Tims, like in the telecom world and the app world. But there are very few people like Tim that create a technology and it ends up in probably one of the most storied marks in the world. I mean, that's a highly unusual thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. When you look back, you need, and anyone that's worked in tech will say this, you need a little bit of luck. And you need a lot.
You need a lot of luck. Yeah.
You need some good technology, but a lot of it is about timing.
Yeah.
Because had we started 2 years earlier, we just wouldn't have been able to get funded.
So when did the Ferrari deal come about?
It was about the 2016 timeframe that we seriously started working on that tech, and it got launched to start with in the SF90 in about 2019. So it took about 3 years to go from a concept through to something that we had in niche production, which is pretty fast. So it was a very fast-paced project.
Now the audience at this point is probably like, wait a minute, you met this guy at a Mercedes event. I don't know if any Mercedes these motors are in. So how does Mercedes fit in the picture?
Yeah, so Mercedes is very supportive of us working with our third-party customers because it's a great way of maturing the technology, growing the technology.
But let's be clear, they're more than just a partner.
Yes, so just over 2 years ago, Mercedes acquired YASA, so we're a 100% owned subsidiary. And we saw this as a huge opportunity to combine forces. So I think Mercedes saw in YASA, hey, this is an innovative, fast-paced,
they
small
probably
company.
saw the same exact thing that I did.
And in Mercedes, we see, they are the originator of the automobile. They are probably, if not the most iconic brands, one of the most iconic brands in automotive. But they're not niche. They have the ability to scale. They're an industrial powerhouse. So for us, when we were talking about a deal, we wanted to see something where Mercedes could bring the best out of YASA and we could bring the best out of Mercedes. So it's a crazy partnership where we can do things exceptionally together.
You don't have to say who, but were there other suitors that wanted to buy the company lock, stock, and barrel?
Yeah, we've never been up for sale, so to speak, because like I said, YASA was started to accelerate electrification. We were created because we want to have an impact on the electric vehicle market. And Mercedes approached us, we didn't approach them, and they proposed something that was really quite unique as a partnership, which, like I said, we weren't looking for this, but we saw it as an opportunity to have the biggest possible impact we could have on the electrification.
Well, what was unique about the proposal besides we want to own the company?
Well, I think you see with a lot of acquisitions that there's an interest in a certain piece of technology or a certain idea or a certain patent or something. I think what was fascinating about the proposition was they said, look, we love your technology, but we're not buying you for the technology you have today. We want to know what you're going to invent tomorrow, and we want to partner with you and turn that into a volume product. And that, for me personally, was just compelling because I know what's on our roadmap, and we'll get to talk about this in the future. this technology you're seeing today is 2 generations old. So we've got, if we say yesterday's technology here, today's technology, the stuff we're going to launch with Mercedes in the middle of the decade is another step up. It's mind-blowing. And yet we're already preparing for what's coming after that, which is absolutely astonishing. So we can look from where we've been to where we are to where we're going, and we can plot a roadmap where the technology is pretty much increasing at a rate of roughly, in all aspects, about 20% every year. We're increasing power density, we're increasing volumetric torque density, we're improving efficiency, other aspects of the motor.
So if I'm reading this correctly, one of the interests from your side, not the Mercedes side, you could develop this technology and not have to worry about multiple rounds of funding and being the startup founder anymore.
And also there becomes a point, one of the beautiful things that Mercedes are doing is they've invested in a plant in Berlin where they're going to make hundreds of thousands of these a year. Hundreds of thousands. I mean, to do that as a UK startup, you're talking hundreds of millions of investments. And it gets to the point where it doesn't make sense for a startup to do this. Mercedes are world experts at industrializing automotive technology. YASA could have done it, but they wouldn't do it nearly as well as Mercedes.
I'm going to interject here for a minute. What I found, so for the avoidance doubt, we're sitting at your headquarters,
Yes.
just outside of Oxford. Thank you for having me. Fantastic facility, and we just did a tour of the factory floor. I find it fascinating. You actually do the manufacturing here.
Yeah.
And you've got a second shift working, started at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
That, when I think of manufacturing, I think the Midlands, but I think like Land Rover.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think high-tech stuff like this.
Yeah.
And number two, I definitely don't think of a second shift starting at 5 p.m.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand for these products, which is great. So, and again, one of the things that I love making stuff. And we've always said from day one, we want to manufacture the products. And it turns out that there's a lot of IPs, a lot of intellectual property, a lot of the patents we've got have been on how to make the machine. And when you looked around the factory, you may have noticed a lot of them have the badge on them, YASA automation, which is we actually designed and built most of the machines to make the machine. Because actually one of the biggest challenges getting the technology into production was there was no supply base where we could say, we want a winding machine. We want a...
Did that drastically drive up the cost of your startup to have to do that?
Absolutely. So...
twofold or tenfold?
Probably tenfold. I would say it was probably 10 times more expensive and substantially more time consuming having to make the machines to make the machine. I mean, I was able to make by myself a prototype within 1 year of my PhD. Making a prototype is very easy, but scaling up to make tens of thousands a year, as you've seen we're doing next door, takes a lot of complexity, a lot of thought.
And you're testing every motor that comes out of here.
Right. So we have, again, this was a piece of machinery designed in-house by YASA. The only reason is we couldn't afford to spend probably £3 or £4 million pounds that you would need to spend to get someone to design that machine for us. So we fully designed all of the end-of-line capability. So every product, the tens of thousands of motors, they all get tested.
Is that a you thing? Like, are you working on the production engineering, or do you hire specific production engineers, which is a job, but there are people in the industry that have this.
And this isn't really my expertise. So we were very fortunate to find some industry experts from the automotive industry who understood. Some of them had come from the power steering industry, for example, who had automated volume lines to make motors for other parts of, not electric vehicles, but just vehicles. And so now I've been involved in some aspects of the productionization and some of the ideas, but it's really, again, you need a blend of skills. You need people that know how to make things in volume in automotive. It's quite a specific skill set. And again, we were very fortunate to hire some really outstanding engineers in that space quite early on the journey, so they could help productionize the product in the right direction.
So if I'm doing the timeline in my head correct, the Ferrari deal predated the Mercedes deal.
Yes.
They don't own anything in the company. They are just a customer of the company.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how does that now work moving forward? You are still supplying these motors for the Ferraris, but you're now owned by Mercedes. I would think there would be a conflict of interest. How is that? What is there a do not call list? Is there you cannot sell to this person, but you can work with others? Where are you at now?
Yeah. So Mercedes are very supportive of YASA having production on site. They want YASA to have end-to-end responsibility because I think good engineers learn a lot from the mistakes you make in production. And the production guys say, never design a motor like this, or don't you dare use those tolerances again. So this is a very important feedback loop. And generally the niche kind of sports car customers we're working with, these aren't competitors to the Mercedes brand. And you might even argue that they're additive in some ways, or complementary at least. But I think it's a very important part of YASA that we are supplying a number of customers, non-competitive
customers. At this point, not just Ferrari. We won't say who, but not just Ferrari.
Number of other customers that may get some media attention in the next few years.
Yeah.
And I think also it's just a very important way to mature technology. I often get asked, how do you deploy technology into the automotive industry? And I've debated this with many people, and I haven't found another way other than in through the top. So, our first serious automotive customer was Koenigsegg. Koenigsegg only needed a couple of hundred motors, but even that was a vital stepping stone in just, going from the hundreds, then into the thousands, then the tens of thousands, and the hundreds of thousands. I've not come across any stories of someone just creating a piece of powertrain technology and putting it straight into the, hundreds of thousands. It just doesn't happen, because there are so many things that have to be demonstrated about a technology. You can make it in volume. It's robust.
Did you find Christian, or did Christian find you?
I can't remember. I think it was a bit of a mutual thing. I think our biz dev was probably chatting, and they found each other. Yeah.
It's kind of, again, my tech world brain is kind of just going crazy with some of the stuff that's happened in a short period of time, if you really think about it. It's, 17 years, 18 years since this thing here.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like quite a long time.
Ferrari, Mercedes, Koenigsegg, there's another one there's a couple of them not mentioning because I saw them in there.
Yeah. I would definitely say there was a huge inflection point around 2016. So we spent 6 or 7 years pretty much, I would say, a bit in the wilderness, really trying to find homes for the technology because the market just wasn't there. And really the key transition happened around the kind of 2016 when we started to get specified on programs so we could build a production line and really carry on with the maturation of the technology. Because you can have the most wonderful technology in the world, but if there is no home for it, if there are no customers that want to make fantastic hybrids or electric cars, you're stuck.
But from what I'm reading now, between the tea leaves of what you've told me, there is a green light from Mercedes to sell this technology to niche car players.
Absolutely.
So like a Koenigsegg, a Ferrari, or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't see that technology in like a Porsche Cayenne, which would be a direct competitor to a GLE.
Exactly. I mean, there are basically a couple of very clear rules from Mercedes, which is the projects have to be additive from, like, we're doing something interesting with the technology, and they have to be obviously a positive business case. And as long as those two are true, then Mercedes are pretty open, like I said, for us to building the manufacturing in the UK.
And is there a discussion to reach beyond the automotive world? Because you had originally started maybe marine, maybe aviation.
Yeah, so we do some other markets here. Now, out of YASA spun a company called Eito, which happened before the acquisition. So Eito is taking this technology into the aerospace market. So that's a completely separate company from YASA. But anything that's non-aerospace, including marine or some industrial, we do here within
now,
YASA.
Now, is that company looking for propulsion of aircraft or secondary system power?
Yeah, it's very much focused on propulsion. So it's taking this technology, and I personally spend some of my time working with them, and we've had some fantastic breakthroughs with the technology. Again, this is more than doubling the power density that we see in the latest products today is what we can achieve in aerospace. So a few more composites, slightly more expensive materials, and we can see a massive step up in the technology.
So stepping back, got to ask, are you the patent holder of this? Like Dr. Tim, is he the patent holder of this?
So the technology's got around 150 patents on it now. So there's not, there are a few key patents, but we've very much taken the approach of when we've hit a problem, because we haven't copied anyone, we've been the first to commercialize this technology. When we've had a problem, we've just focused, worked hard to solve the problem, and normally that's yielded patents. So that's the nice thing about being the first to really mature and commercialize the technology. So we've got a pretty broad set of patents, and we're still inventing. So we're still patenting a lot as well, because there's a huge open space.
So some
for
of
this
them
technology.
Some of them are Dr. Tim.
So some of them were invented during my PhD. So a number of them have my name, and others. Many of them have come from the YASA team over the last 10 years. So they've got lots of different names. I've been involved in quite a few of them. But the whole patent portfolio is owned by Mercedes. And so that was part of the value that they saw in YASA, is they've not only got a team that can invent, but they've also got the patent portfolio, which somewhat protects the technology from others getting too close to what we're doing.
Do you see competitors in your space at this point?
I think, interestingly, there's been a huge increase in, so we track the number of patents, for example, in axial flux motors just in the last 2 or 3 years. So I would say traditionally we've not really seen too many competitors in the space. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, I think there's going to be a lot more interest and a lot more developments, a lot more patents, a lot more people developing the technology. So what I say to the team at YASA is, you've just got to be fast, because we're not really, we don't look to be a defensive company. We're not particularly litigious or looking to chase after people that have similar technologies, because our motivation is to make the best products and to get there first. So to be quick, that's our motivation. That's our best defense. And like I said, if you look at the speed at which the technology is developing, every year we're looking for 20% plus gains. There's just a remarkable trajectory for the technology. We haven't stopped. We're kind of almost at the early stages of the technology development.
You've been reading books by Jack Welch. That was his.
No?
You've been reading books by Jack Welch.
No, what did he say?
Jack Welch, who was the famed CEO of GE.
Okay.
And his whole thing was, be first or second in your industry or get the hell out.
Yeah.
Meaning be fast.
Yeah.
Which I always found fascinating. Okay, so being fast, let's talk about this. You had kind of intimated that there's another generation that's already working on, and a generation beyond that. You're at the germination stage of that. Anything you can share about that? Things we can look forward to? Let's dream together. Sell me the dream, Dr. Tim.
Yeah. Well, I obviously can't say too much, but the power density of the product is getting to absolutely eye-watering stages where, if you compare it to a carbon ceramic brake disc, it's pretty much there. Now that starts to open up whole new games as to where you can put the motors. Maybe instead of having them right in the center, you can start placing them close to the wheels. You can think about the amount of regenerative braking you're doing and really push those limits up, which massively increases things like your track efficiency and your efficiency in real world driving as well. So, and of course we've got the whole weight down, where if we can take another 50 kilos out the traction system, or another 100 kilos out, that cascades to another 100 kilos in the vehicle. So we're really on that trajectory of huge, not just little steps, but big step gains in the propulsion system, big improvements in the architecture where we can place them, and big impacts on the whole vehicle architecture. So we're going to see some fascinating technologies come out. And it's not, of course, just YASA working in this space. The whole ecosystem is looking to say, well, what is the next generation of electric vehicle going to look like? What are the opportunities? Because we're really 10 years into a journey. Automotive has been making cars for 100 years. So I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see some really surprising step changes.
My audience knows this about me. I love tech. Obviously, it's my background. I've always loved tech. The big problem I've had with the transition to EV, I feel like the wrong people have been pushing the wrong incentives and it's kind of sullied an otherwise promising technology. Like governments coming in with mandates in unrealistic timeframes just screw everything up, and they're not trying to solve the problems they're really trying to solve, or the problems that they have identified. They're not trying to solve those problems. And I'm listening to what you're telling me. If I'm getting this correct, you don't have to confirm or deny because I know that this is a future product. But the reality is, this would be a game changer if you're talking about positioning the motor somewhere else. I would almost think that you guys, Mercedes, you as just YASA, would think you'd need to pull the Elon Musk thing, where what made him successful really wasn't the cars. And if we're honest, the cars weren't screwed together very well early on. They weren't particularly great. They were designed to look like an Audi A7 because that's what everybody wanted, an Audi A7. They could have been anything at the time, but they just made them look like a car people wanted. What you're talking about is changing the form factor, and it sounds like it would be more, at least in this second generation, talking about very high performance cars.
Yeah, I mean, again, if we go to why does YASA exist, we're not existing, or we didn't start to, just move the dial a little bit on the automotive industry. We want to have an impact because we love the industry and we love technology. And I think what we're seeing is a whole number of things converge. We're seeing the performance of the motor and the weight come down, the performance go up. We're seeing real openness and desire in the industry to do new things and different things, because otherwise all electric cars can generically be quite similar. They can converge into quite a boring space. So
they'll just be widgets.
Yeah, they're looking for differentiation. And we see in our technology the opportunity not just to differentiate, like I said, at a subsystem or motor level, but have huge impact at an architectural level. And again,
so does that mean you're working with the folks at Mercedes, kind of like Elon did, where I'm not just about the car. I realized to sell the car, I need to have an infrastructure. So he built an infrastructure, and now he's got a second business.
Yeah.
Are you working with the folks, let's call it the M&A group at Mercedes-Benz, where you're going and seeking out technology to get that battery smaller, to make that battery lighter, or I know that they're doing some investment for infrastructure in the U.S. Do they consult you on that? Are you part of that?
Yeah, I mean,
that decision process?
We're really focused on propulsion technologies. That's our game, and we've got our hands full with stuff to do there. So and we see such an opportunity in that space. So there is, like I say, there's so much innovation going into the current gen of products and the next gen products. There's no shortage of spaces to innovate, and I think they're actually going to have a huge impact at a vehicle level, and that's what we get excited about.
Do you see something like this making its way into like an A-Class? Like a series production car?
Yeah, I mean, again, the long-term trajectory, we can only ever see kind of about 2 generations ahead of us, because it's too hard to see 10, 15 years into the future. But certainly we're scaling the volumes. We're going from the tens of thousands you see here to the hundreds of thousands. Of course, the dream would be eventually to get into the millions. Why not? But that's a whole other journey to scale the technology to that level. So to start with, we're really focused on the sports car, the high performance space, because that just fits perfectly with the USPs of the technology.
Let's be honest, it's more fun.
It's more fun as well. And then, but ultimately, of course, the hope is we want to have a broader impact on the Mercedes portfolio. But this is really too early to tell.
Okay, so let's kind of like look at this from a 30,000 foot level. What are 3 aspects that have made you and YASA successful? If you were to point to 3 things that happened in your career, in you developing the technology, what are 3 aspects that led to the success that YASA is today?
So, good question. I think I'd probably say, not in any particular order, I'd say your technology needs a good DNA. We could never have predicted, or we knew this 3-to-1 ratio should be there right from the time of my PhD. I didn't think that we would maintain it over all these years, and so the technology's got a great DNA. I'd say the second thing is we've had to persevere through some really tough, difficult projects and solve some really hard problems, and I'd say that comes down to we've nurtured and mentored a fantastic team in Yasser just to.
And I never asked, how big is the overall company people-wise?
Yes, it's about 400 people now.
Okay.
So I'd say about half of that is related to the operational production side of the business, and maybe half in the engineering side. And then the third point is that you need some serendipity or some luck, some good fortune. And I would say that the timing, some of the way the market evolved and changed, some of the business relationships. If you combine that, you need a bit of good fortune, you need the team, and you need the technology. Then I think you've got the opportunity to make a great business.
I appreciate the very honest answer, especially that last one. Sir, thank you very much for having me. Really, really fascinated by the whole story. Let's stay in contact, because I want to see where this ends up beyond some of the Italian cars that it's in now.
Fantastic, thank you.
Until we see you guys in the next episode, bis später.